Hello and welcome to the Captain's Table Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Berserker01 Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender at the Astropub, your professor on the Astrohistorian, and the moderator here on the Captain's Table Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to Star Citizen. We talk about Star Citizen lore, news, and more. We're bringing people from all over the Star Citizen universe to discuss everything from theory crafting to the latest news to discussions on the latest vibes of the community. And joining me today is a esteemed cast of various different people from various different perspectives on the game. So before we get started on the spicy conversation, I think this is an important conversation, but definitely a spicy one. Let's introduce folks. So I'm going to start with you, Vertigo. Who are you?
Yay!
So this the undisputed Sultan of Salt in Stanton's Salt Sultan.
Paul's so full of himself. He's like, Vertigo, why don't you hold on a second? I'm going to introduce you for you.
I want to give you your title first. All right. The Salt Sultan of Stanton, Mr. HC Vertigo. Who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
HC Vertigo. I'm over here on Twitch, streaming Star Citizen most days. 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific. That's the Seattle Los Angeles time zone. Thursdays to Tuesdays. We're usually off on days. You can find me on YouTube, HC Vertigo on YouTube. I usually do like shorts, occasionally a little more long form, occasionally long form videos, but mostly short clips and what highlights. Find me on Blue Sky, HC Vertigo on Blue Sky, Instagram, HC Vertigo on Instagram. And try and find fun things to do in Star Citizen most days.
You still do variety stuff though at times, right?
Yeah, we do variety stuff every so often. We're looking to start up some Factorio Space Age.
Nice. Radar Ranger. Background. Who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
My name is Andy Green. I'm CEO of a company called My Radar. I like to say that I'm a self-professed Star Citizen uber nerd. I've been a backer since 2012. I'm a CEO of this company that makes this mobile app called My Radar. It's a weather app. And the Star Citizen connection with that is that back in 2017, we did this little integration where you could browse the moons of Star Citizen offline using your mobile phone in the app. And it was kind of neat. I did a presentation in 2017 at the Citizen Con. So if you actually wanted to go back and watch that, you could get more of the details. But I'm obviously a huge fan. I love to participate in these chats. I'm always very opinionated on certain subjects. You can find me on Blue Sky at A Green, and you can also find me at myradar.com.
Sweet.
That's the short version.
And Mr. Space Tomato, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen, and where can they find you?
Sweet Tomatoes. I got it. That's the inside joke. I every time I see that name, I always got to call you Sweet Tomatoes because it's a restaurant that was really good here in Florida, and that was the name. We used to go there all the time. That's the only thing I can think of every time I see your name.
You said it was. Is it no longer?
They right after COVID, they closed up.
Yeah, a lot of restaurants closed up after COVID.
Yeah, that's right. But it was very good. So it's a good.
I'll just remember it as your nickname for me, Sweet Tomato. It's very endearing. I make YouTube videos for the most part. I do some streams. We have the podcasts. But generally, Space Tomato Gaming is a main YouTube channel where you can find me. Space Tomato 2 is kind of where like a lot of the stream content and podcasts are. We have a gameplay channel that I'm kind of working on getting up to activity. But then we also have a Discord server.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
That's something. We've got a Discord and there's a Star Citizen org as well. So kind of pretty spread throughout Star Citizen stuff. Most of my day consists around Star Citizen. It's what me and my wife both do full time, covering this and doing the community and all that jazz. So dialed in and ready to be hated for my love for an FPS component in the space game.
Well, that's a good transition because the title of this, while it is intentionally spicy, What Happened to My Space Game, is a thing that I have heard many a time in the Star Citizen community, in my chat and other people's chats, on YouTube comments, on Spectrum, on Reddit. People really seem to believe that Star Citizen has sort of drifted away from its initial vision of a space game, and it's no longer the same space game or even a space game. I've heard people call it things like Starkov and Star of Duty and
Star of Duty.
Yeah, like so many different like names, which are, you know, intentionally very provocative to try to like, you know, claim that the game is bad now because it's no longer focusing on space. So I think we'll just start off with the very beginning with, I'll just sort of introduce for people who may not be here, because all of us have been immersed in this universe for a while and kind of know the origins of Star Citizen. But a lot of people don't know that when Star Citizen started out, it started out as a fundraiser, like we've seen for forever. They sold ships so they could, again, game packages so they could get money. But their website crashed when they tried to do this independently. So they decided, instead of using the website, they were going to use Kickstarter, because Kickstarter had just recently been a thing. And so they decided to use Kickstarter as a means of just gathering the money. And by sheer happenstance, they broke the record for Kickstarter goals because of it. They made something like $2 to $3 million off of Kickstarter. I know it's been surpassed since then, but it was a huge sort of milestone for them. And since that time, they've been entirely dedicated to the crowdfunded experience model. But the main focus of that was the promise of effectively Freelancer 2, the Freelancer game that came out in, I think, 2001, which was Chris Roberts' last major game that was taken away from him by Microsoft because he was taking too much time to develop the game. If that sounds familiar, there's a reason why. Yeah. But he'd always wanted to make that game more than it was. I always had these ambitions. And so he decided to create a game that's sort of a sequel to that. And at the same time, he also wanted to get back to making Wing Commander. So he created Squadron 42. There's a myth that Squadron 42 came first and then Star Citizen was an afterthought, or vice versa. There's no evidence that I've seen of both. The evidence I found is that they both were thought of at the same time, with the idea.
Well, it was going to be like Freelancer, where you had like this showed up during the lawsuit with Crytek, where you were going to have a single player game, a single player component to Star Citizen, and Star Citizen was going to be the multiplayer mode. Mm-hmm. And that came out of the Crytek lawsuit. But I think Chris Roberts kind of like lost his goddamn mind in development, and he decided to separate two. We're going to make a really cool cinematic game because we're making all this money. It's going to be a movie. And we're going to separate the two.
It was already going to be two different games, because Chris has always pitched the idea as Squad 42 as the 21st century Wing Commander. That was even from the original pitch.
This idea that you'd be able to like be in the Squadron 42 campaign within the Star Citizen universe was crazy, considering what Squadron is now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So like that was the origin, and all of the sort of Kickstarter goals and all these other like stretch goals that they wanted to have were more focused around expanding the game from that initial start. And a lot of that stuff is stuff that we've either seen in game now or is slowly coming in. Things like planetary landings, which was supposed to be a post-release feature that they were going to work on, but it was part of the expansion. Most of it was like expanding the number of planets they were going to have and expanding the ship lineups that we're going to do. So if I remember correctly, like the whole series, I think was a Kickstarter goal. It was like that kind of stuff. So as a result of this, a lot of people backed for that reason. And as the game has progressed forward, people have felt like the game has shifted away from its space roots and sort of chasing trends or becoming too mainstream. Because early on, a lot of the discussion was on things like
too mainstream. I got a comment on that one.
Okay, I mean, there's a reason why people call it Star of Duty, kind of idea. And a lot of early on, there's a lot of discussion of this is a space sim. This is a space sim. And so people now think like, oh, this isn't a space sim at all. This is an arcade game that's pretending to be a space sim. So
I kind of agree with that. Star Citizen no longer a sim. Like we've moved on to a little more arcadiness, but we could keep going, Paul. Sorry.
I was going to say we'll get to that point because I have my own theory on that one, and it has to do with the nebulous and shitty nature of how you describe
how you define sim and how you define arcade,
or how you and how you define space sim. Because like I'll just say this: it has to do with what is the difference between an action game and a Metroidvania game, or an action game and a Soulsborne, right?
I think like action is like a very, very broad umbrella that covers a lot of different genres.
Yes.
And like Metroidvania has a very, very defined, like you have to have, here's this box you have to fit into to be a Metroidvania game, but this box also fits under the umbrella of action.
But I think what happened was that when Chris Roberts was talking about a space sim, he was talking about space sim as in the 90s they defined space sims, which is it's not a sim. It's like how, what is it?
Oh, yeah.
What was it called? Deus Ex. The first Deus Ex was considered a immersive sim. Like no one would call the Deus Ex game, the first game today, immersive sim. That wouldn't fit. You know,
the problem with immersive sims is they're extremely rare in terms of like being made. Like not many people have actually played an immersive sim and realized it.
And that's the thing.
Genre, their long-term successes on them too, though.
Yeah, well, that's
part of what keeps people playing. Sometimes is the gamification of it.
And that's the thing is that like I think space sim. When was the last before 2012? When was the last space sim that was released? It was probably like Independence War or like the X series.
If you X4 Foundation was released a little while ago, they got updates.
I mean, it might have been X3.
I consider that kind of a sim.
It may have been an X3 before 2012.
But if you really want to start ringing like the word sim, like to actually simulate, would be like obviously like my favorite series, Independence War, the Starship Simulator.
Yeah.
And I War Edge of Chaos. Those games actually simulated like how actual spaceflight would be. And there was probably other indie games we're missing too that actually simulate that stuff. Like was it Planetary Bodies or something?
Yeah. But I mean, you get what I'm saying. Like most people didn't know what a space sim was because space sims had been dead for a decade. They were like independent games here and there, and like it was Star Citizen's Kickstarter that allowed Elite Dangerous to be able to get its funding. It allowed for games like Call of Duty Infinite Warfare to be greenlight. It allowed for games like Planeteers and even or Astroneers, and even games like No Man's Sky.
Oh, you know what? I just realized, like, you know what?
To go out.
Game I would consider an actual space sim. I'm probably gonna get this wrong, but it was like Outer Worlds.
Yeah, that was definitely
Wilds?
Outer Wilds.
Outer Wilds. That game definitely has sim potential in it.
Oh yeah, KSP. But I mean,
Kerbal Space Program.
Yeah.
No, if you really want to get hardcore into
that's a true sim.
Yeah, that actual true sim. You know, no true Scotsman fallacy, right?
We're getting off into the weeds already. But the point.
I know we're trying to define what a sim is, right? What are we simulating?
And I think that's the point, though, is that like early on in the Star Citizen's development, a lot of these words were being bandied around, and a lot of these kind of ideas and expectations were bandied around. And I think a lot of people who are that early backer group feel like this has no longer the case. This is no longer the focus of the game. The focus is no longer space travel and space exploration and space fun, and it is now go shoot people on the ground. So the first question I have, and I'll start with you on this one, Tomato. Is this right? Is Star Citizen no longer a space game?
No.
It's not, or is it? It is.
It is not no longer a space game.
So it is a space game.
It is definitely a space game.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that you could say it's not to be hyperbolic, but like
everything takes place in space.
Yeah, I was gonna say, could you just say anything is a space game? Because
everything's in space, right?
Yeah.
Like that clip from like Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I don't know. The way I look at a space game is you can have a space game, but it still has to have things in it.
Yeah.
And to add things into a space game isn't to take the space away. It takes some of the focus away. Like if you're adding planetary locations, then you're taking away the idea of trade routes between two space stations because now you're accounting for different variables and stuff. But it's not like focusing on planetary development takes away the fact that you're playing a space game in which you still need to fly spaceships. You still have to account for distances between planets and gravities and different atmospheres and all the kind of stuff that comes with space. It's like one of the things people are complaining about most right now is the idea that life support and engineering is coming in. That's a huge part of a space sim or a game that takes part in space. Because the main difference between space and what we're used to is the atmosphere and is the source of power and oxygen. So I think that it's not like it's just a straightforward equation as to whether it's a space game or not.
Okay. Radar, same question for you. Is Star Citizen still a space game?
Absolutely. I mean, no question about it. It just has a lot more to it now that is supplemental to the space part of it, you know? I mean, when they first started the game, you know, they had originally kind of envisioned building this game based off of raising $2 or $3 million or so. And they're now almost at the billion mark.
Mm-hmm.
If they did not reinvest that money into continuing to build out the game and to add to it, we'd have a very limited niche game that had a ton of extra money sitting over on the side of it, you know?
Yeah.
I think all of the FPS stuff that's in the game, all it does is really supplement that space aspect. You have the choice in this game to just be a spaceship pilot, focus on your spaceship tasks, especially when engineering and everything else comes out, buying components to improve your ship, you know, working around on your ship with engineering and fuses and things like that, and improving the weapons. Those are all the characteristics of a space game. And if you really want to, you can stay there. The beauty now is you can actually get up and walk around in your ship.
Mm-hmm.
So all the other stuff on the side of it is fluff that if you really don't like it, you do not have to participate in it. So yeah, absolutely a space game.
Vertigo, is Star Citizen still a space game?
I think they're starting to move away from really the space heavy stuff. Because I remember being able to like get out of my ship, explore asteroid belts and whatnot. I remember they had the room system where your ship would actually run out of oxygen at some point.
Mm.
They haven't really done anything with that. Be able to like I have a clip on my hard drive from like 2019. I have to look this up about them decompressing the cargo bays on the Caterpillar and like launching cargo out into space.
Yeah.
Using that, you can demagnetize the cargo grid, and you can open up the doors on the Caterpillar and de-energize the air shield, and then like the cargo would just fly out into space. And we're seeing a lot of content. And I think this is where kind of like the core of where this complaint comes, Paul. This topic is that we're seeing a lot of content these days being pumped out that require FPS, CZs, and Pyro, Hathor mining events. You go back, you wind the clock back a little bit more with Siege of Orison, right? A lot of these big events that stick in people's minds that have been around for a while have been very, 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 very much FPS focused, right? And you get a lot of other FPS focused stuff like underground bunkers, the distribution centers, which also have a lot of FPS stuff that happens there. A lot of the mission givers, Constantine Hurston, his missions would take you down to a bunker. What was it? I'm trying to think of the other guys. The air is dreadful today. Who is that guy?
Gosh,
exactly.
I know who you're talking about though.
Clovis Darneely. No?
Clovis,
Darneely.
Clovis
Darneely. His mission would take you to a bunker as well eventually.
Mm-hmm.
I miss his missions too. Those
even Tisha Pacheco was taking you to like bunkers to destroy like drugs. And stuff.
No,
but she would occasionally Tisha Pacheco. She would eventually have you go to like I love that mission where you go to the Caterpillar that's knocked out in space.
Yes,
and you have
there
to go
was
through.
space elements that
There was a space element there. We actually have to fly up and secure this Caterpillar. You have to knock down a comm array. We don't see a lot of that content being released. And I think that's kind of the core of this complaint, where we have space stations like Security Post Karaya. We have comm arrays where you can like get out of you have to fly up, get out of your ship, go in, do something in EVA, and then fly back to your ship and then go to another ship and do stuff inside that other ship. Or those old Reclaimer missions that are now gone.
Mm-hmm.
Remember those where you get the missions from ArcCorp, Microtech, Crusader to go find a Reclaimer. You have to retrieve something from the Reclaimer around Crusader, take it to Grim Hex, Or you had the one around ArcCorp where you had to do some puzzles. You have to knock the gravity generator out, find where the captain was, and click on the captain, do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, those rooms are added in like that was like 3.18.
That was a long time ago. I've been with Star Citizen for too long.
So that was,
And
that was 317.
And also, like, we have like another thing, Jumptown, Ghost Hollow, another of those two Call of Duty-ish kind of events that have been. So these are the kind of things that stick with people, like these planetary locations. And I could see why people have these opinions, because it would be nice to have like a contested zone that had like mixed gravity, no gravity kind of thing, where you kind of fly through it, you have to get out of your ship, float in, and then find a thing. Then, you have EVA kind of combat a little bit with people, NPCs. We don't have any NPCs that really go into EVA really and fight you. No. It's all gravity-based stuff.
And do you feel like all those complaints, though, do you feel those justify and preclude people from still doing the space side of things? Space missions, cargo missions, that kind of thing?
I don't think we're precluding anybody from anything. This is more of like an observation, I would think.
Yeah.
From people.
Yeah.
People are saying that I want more space stuff, and I think they're right. I think we're getting a lot of planet side stuff, right?
Yeah.
Gravity-based stuff.
I do agree. I agree that they're focusing a lot on, some of the ground-based FPS, for example, because they now have all this extra territory that they kind of have to fill. If you remember, the reason why I was kind of confused, I was thinking about Tessa Bannister.
Yeah. Oh God, here we go.
Those missions were kind of cool because, they were all spaceship driven. It was flying from point A to point B. And I think there was one part of it where you actually had to like EVA into
all of them.
It was like there was like 10 Tessa Bannister missions, and it was about the 9th or 10th one. You had to go into a wreck and find like a box you had to click on.
Yeah. Wasn't there one where you had to go into the Kovalex place too, or is that a different mission?
That was that was the Kovalex
PI wanted mission.
Yeah.
Is the PI wanted mission still in the game? I don't think it is.
Yes. No. It should. They got removed finally.
Yeah. It was.
I gotta check.
4.0 first came in, I think.
I gotta go check to see if that's still available. That mission's been in the game forever.
Yeah, that was the best.
I think those. Yeah, adding that as a side for some of the ship-based stuff for the people who really enjoy the ship-based interaction of the game. Those are pluses.
But that PI wanted mission, that's peak space kind of stuff.
Everyone loves
it. But that's from an FPS perspective, right? So if that mission ended with you shooting somebody, would somebody not then quickly just in a random comment say, "Oh yeah, that's more Call of Duty content," even though it's taking part in space?
I think that's the question, and I think that's where I think it comes down to understanding that, like, I've been saying this a lot because this is one of those. No matter what you believe, we live in a weird post-fact world where vibes matter more than anything, and if people's vibes are off, you have to, especially with kind of these sorts of with video games and stuff like that. At least it's a little bit easier to, like, you got to dig down and understand what is going on. Why are people saying the way what they are? Because if you understand why they're saying it, you can maybe understand the root cause of it. Sometimes it's just people have untreated issues that they need to deal with, and they're taking it out on a video game. But a lot of times it's like one of the things I was talking about today before the podcast on a stream, where it's like the average person who plays Star Citizen, especially earlier versions of Star Citizen, probably played the game for a little bit, didn't know what it is, was suggested to do it, hopped into the game, played it, and then a bug that just kind of show-stopping prevented them from playing it after they did hours or frustrated them. They just sort of just gave up and then went to go complain, like, this game sucks. Like, I fell through the fucking planet when I was trying to play the game. This sucks. I hate this. And why are they saying that? Because they wanted to play the game. They thought it was cool, and now the game's not letting them play it, so they get mad at the game. But then when it comes to that sort of experience, is that good feedback for CIG, or is that noise? Like, we know people fall through the planet. We know people have bugs.
Oh my God, I literally have a clip of Chris Roberts saying, we know it's missing.
Yeah.
We're working
no
on
shit.
it.
It was no shit. We know it's missing,
Yeah.
And that's
on the list of to do.
And go ahead.
Paul, I kind of disagree with you on that. I think we're seeing more like the casualization or the broadification. What is it? It's like we're letting the normies into Star Citizen. We're trying to cater to the normies. We're trying to make things more, I know this is a bad word for gamers. Gamers hate this word, accessible, right? Accessibility, because that's where your player base is going to be. Chris Roberts has this problem where he likes to think big, and then he has to roll it back to what people. Chris Roberts can make an excellent game. This is a Chris Taylor quote, honestly. Chris Taylor was like making video games for years. Total Annihilation Kingdoms, Supreme Commander, I believe. And Chris Taylor was like, I've said this before on this channel. Chris Taylor, I remember this quote from Chris Taylor that says, I could make any game in the world. I could make infinite games in this world. The problem is we're not going to be able to sell those games. Right? Yeah. There's a market, there's what you can make, and then there's your market that will buy what you make, right? And sometimes you have to make the game that's going to sell, so you can continue selling video games. You can continue to pay mortgages on your house. Yeah.
I mean, so the broadest population.
That's art.
So, yeah. Well, not really. Like art, you can make for yourself, but art can also be made to sell as well. I mean, like some people have there's that very erroneous quote that goes around that says anything that's made for profit is not art. Well, guess what? Shakespeare, Mozart. They were making art to be sold to people so they can continue making a living.
They could eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they continue to
live.
Mozart. That was his job, was making music, right? Yeah. So I think we're seeing a lot of Call of Duty-ification, right? We're seeing a lot of that because that stuff people can relate to, right? You go down to Hathor, you shoot things. There's NPCs, there's players. People want more PvP, more action in their game. And I think that does run counter to the original vision of like Death of a Spaceman, where you don't want to die because you're going to, Death of a Spaceman, big boogeyman, like, ooh, don't die. It's kind of scary. But here we got like contested zones. We got Hathor, and you're encouraging people to like seek conflict with each other. Right? And you're also like changing the respawns. Like the tier 3 med beds can now respawn everybody.
Yeah.
Now tier 0 item recovery, everybody just gets their crap back when they die. So I kind of agree with that. Like we're starting to see kind of
a space game is what you're trying to say.
Well, I kind of agree with that statement. Star Citizen has kind of moved away from the space stuff, from the 2.0 to 3.0 branch. 2.0 I think was like peak space for Star Citizen. Because you're going through yellow asteroid belt and you cut.
Well, there was no FPS really at that point.
There was Pariah, but there was no planetary landings.
Yeah. I think, to your point, I think you're right in the sense that, and I don't want to step on.
No, keep going. Like I've been talking for a while. It's your turn. Let's hear.
Go, and then we'll let Tomato speak, and then I'll go. So
they do have an issue where they've got all this land content they kind of have to fill out, and they are absolutely introducing a lot more FPS related content that you can't really dispute. I do agree that I still feel like this is absolutely a space game, but I think at some point they are going to have to remember the roots of it and start doubling back on the space content. And I kind of feel like we're getting there. We're waiting for larger ships that are multi-crew. We're waiting for
engineering.
And thank you, engineering. And honestly, even the space stations and crafting in space. I think those are going to be key drivers that help people do more in space when they get good cargo hauling and good mining operations. Those are all the things that all the FPS people will do and generate content for. And then the cargo haulers and the miners will need to be able to bring that stuff back and forth. So,
Space, you're going to say something?
Yeah.
I think it's confirmation bias, to be honest. I think that it's really easy to get us to focus on just the last couple updates or so. And there's a lot of FPS stuff that's been added since 4.0 came out, with some of the different events and things going on. But over the last few years, we're also seeing, we still see space stuff get developed, from the salvage missions to kind of revitalizing Korea a little bit, to the mercenary missions they're throwing in now with the new ship stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say that with 411 is a pretty big indication.
I think a big part of why it feels so FPS focused over maybe the last year or the last 2 years is because we're just seeing a lot of squadron stuff come in, and that CIG likes to focus on whatever works best for them. So for the first 6 years of this game's life cycle, from 2.0 till 3.0, I think it was, maybe 3.1 or 2, there was nothing else to do in this game other than go fly places and shoot things, or go press a button to say, "Hey, I found."
I'm gonna have to disagree with Space Tomato here, but I'm gonna let you finish.
Okay.
I got opinions.
And for a while, it was just fly your ship, shoot stuff, even up until maybe 3.18. No,
I think it was around.
I
that,
can't
yeah.
say exactly
It was around
when, but
FPS gameplay was added about the same time Hearthstone was added, 3.3.5.
no.
I think it was
was gonna say
3.3 was the first time they added FPS AI to Security Post Karaya before Hearthstone.
right, because that was introduced with that Citizen Con. So going from 3.0, we got ship missions, courier missions, FPS combat missions, and then finally in 3.18 we got salvage missions. So if you looked at this in a different perspective, you could say, well, this game's been all combat all the time. Doesn't matter if it was ship or FPS, it was just combat. Yeah, you could bring a box around, but everything was combat focused. And that was because that's all CIG had. They were focusing on squadron. They were trying to get combat working because it was easy. So everything was combat focused. Then we started getting salvage and mining. We still haven't gotten mining missions actually, but then we started getting salvage missions.
I disagree. We had Supply or Die, which had a bunch of mining missions.
Well, yeah, but that was different.
Yeah.
Actually,
Actually,
I mean, like in the actual contract manager, it didn't feel like they were building out any particular type of gameplay except for combat and then that little bit of courier stuff. And so like we get to this point, and while I agree they are focusing more on FPS stuff, I feel like it's just them doing what's working for them right now, which was the Squadron 42 stuff. We know that they're focusing on engineering. They want life support and gravity to be an important thing. We're seeing some new space locations come in with the space facilities in Pyro, and now they're putting them in Stanton with this one. I think they just need to get past whatever section of focus they're in right now, and we will start to see the pendulum shift again, and they'll take some other focus.
So do you feel like when they have some of the larger ships and engineering come out, you think we'll probably start to see that swing?
Dude, I think that the 890 jump is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of space-based missions we can have. I mean, they've built these ships to be so freaking detailed. It would be crazy for them not to use them for set pieces.
Yeah.
there we are. They already have an 890 jump mission.
I know.
Yeah.
The question is
Like,
more
imagine the Ironclad, the freaking Idris, the Kraken, the Polaris, using those as like places where you can go in to salvage or explore.
Those are great, valid points. Honestly, when we have ships that are big enough for orgs to live out of and they get the mechanics working on properly, I think that is absolutely right. When we were just talking about that in our org the other day, when the Idris is finally in the game and we've got something big enough where we can kind of live out of it, I think that's when you'll probably see things start to rotate a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you guys because I have ADHD and I have points I want to talk about.
Go
I disagree with
points.
Space Tomato.
Okay.
I disagree with Space Tomato. Early on 2.0, 3.0, we had a lot of space content that was not combat focused, shooting stuff. We had courier missions, but we also had go out and retrieve. We had retrieval missions, going out, find the black box, go out, find corpses.
Those fell under my category of press a button to say I went to a place missions.
Right. And you also had salvage missions too. In 2.0, 3.0, you can go out to find wrecks, and you can find like those cigar boxes, those whiskey bottles. You can make a little money doing that. So we had a little. We also had the wanted mission from like 2.0 to 3.0. I can't remember when they finally got rid of that 0.0 or something. But you didn't have a lot of variety. You also had cargo hauling, but you'd lose money on cargo hauling because of Ks back in the day. And I think the point of this is Star Citizen becoming more Call of Duty like is, even though I've played a little bit of 441 with the new ghillie missions and the new locations, it's just fly around, shoot stuff. It's not like we had back in 2.0 or 3.0 where you can get out of your ship, go through a wreck, find stuff, and do EVA stuff in space. It's you're in your ship, you're in your cockpit, you're flying around, you're shooting stuff. It's basically the new space-based missions. The few I played is basically just the Merc missions with voice lines. That's it.
Do you think they're not going to make those again?
I'm afraid that they won't. I feel like we've lost that je ne sais quoi, that certain space feeling of like getting out of your ship and just like floating over like you're an astronaut and floating through a wreck site. Because there's a little bit of that in Pyro with the CZs, some of the contested zones. You have to prep for the contested zones, which means you have to go to a supervisor asteroid base, get a red key card. Yeah. Or the executive hangar. But it's you park off to the side and you float over, you go into an airlock, and then suddenly you're Call of Duty again, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. They don't have, you said it earlier, they don't have NPCs in EVA. So there's and
even just not even having NPCs in EVAs, just having, like, we have salvage missions, right? you go out, you shoot your laser beams, and this is another criticism that we have of Star Citizen, Beam Citizen. We're shooting beams at everything, right?
Yeah.
You shoot beams at cargo to move the cargo. You shoot beams at rocks to break the rocks to collect them with your prospector. You shoot beams at derelict ships to collect the resources. And if someone's dying,
I'm
you
grateful
shoot beams
for
at
it.
them.
I
don't
will
want to
beams
run
at
around
them.
picking up pebbles.
I will interrupt you right now and say I am absolutely a proponent of Beam Citizen. Long live the Beam
Yes.
Citizen. I would rather Beam Citizen because if we had anything else, Star Citizen would still be in
I would
2.0.
I
It would
remember
be
picking
insane.
up rocks. That was very boring.
Yeah, that was boring. I agree. I would like to have for like a mining. I'd like to have Elite Dangerous deep core mining.
I haven't
honestly,
played that, so I don't know whether
If
that
for I recommend going up looking for those of you right now. Look up Elite Dangerous' deep core mining. It is probably one of the most amazing mining. Just you basically launch these. It's like, have you seen the movie? What was it with Bruce Willis where they had to blow up the asteroid? Armageddon. Have you seen that?
Armageddon.
That's basically what you do. You find an asteroid with a bunch of cool stuff in it, and you launch nukes at it, and the nukes drill into the center of the asteroid, and then it blows the hell up, and it's just the coolest thing ever.
Yeah,
Mhm.
EDS
Like,
is the best mining. We need.
I watch it every so often when I'm alone by myself as like a guilty pleasure. It's just so cool
I
to
think
watch
they
the
tried to get
audio, the
some of that.
visuals.
I think they tried to get some of that with the gadgets. You know, the
Yeah.
idea of going out and planting something on it, but
Honestly,
yeah.
I'm still hoping.
But I like that. I like that gadget gameplay, by the way. For mining, for like space mining, you go out of your ship and you bring a gadget you attach to the rock. That's the kind of stuff, space stuff that people want, I think, in their game.
But then you tell somebody to do that, and they're like, "Well, that's not worth the time to get out of my ship."
Exactly, and that's a
do that.
problem with the mining loop itself. The payoff, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is we need more valuable rocks. That is, Quantanium should be really tough to mine and really valuable. So you definitely want to get out and attach that mining gadget.
Or you
think
need
that's
the mining
gonna
gadget to do it in
change,
the first
though.
place. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll
exactly.
probably change when you need to get those rare materials to build that thing, to
Yeah.
craft that thing that you really want. And I think that's where the
I think-
real value in taking the extra time to do it.
Let me interrupt for just a bit because I've been letting you all talk, and I do want to address something because I want to ask you this question, Vertigo. To Space Tomato's point, do you think that CIG is moving away from these things because EVA 2.0 or whatever version of AVA they're working on isn't in the game yet? The whole the push and pull and all that kind of mechanics. We have parts of it, but we're still missing like the whole. You have that sort of thing. So like, do you think CIG might be steering away from those missions because they want to build those missions around that EVA mechanic, which just isn't in the game yet?
We know they're doing NPC EVA. They showed it.
And they have it. They've talked about it multiple times in the month report.
They can still go back to the 2.0 and the 3.0 area of ideas. Those ideas are still brilliant, in my opinion.
Okay.
The idea is you have a rec site you roll up onto, and then you acquire something from that rec site for a mission.
What I'm asking though is, do you think like they will bring those ideas back with the new and improved EVA mechanics and things like engineering when those come in? So you might
that's very very much possible. Like you could have like a but I don't see why they would have to wait, because we already have repair missions in the game, right?
I can tell you why. Player choice. Making sure that you've got the right kind of undersuit with enough fuel. That you could defend yourself if you get attacked by somebody, but you still have a suit that you could navigate with. If that becomes part of the calculus on how you proceed through one of those missions, I could see why they might want to wait. I'm being presumptuous here, but you know.
Yeah, but they could easily just slap down like a comm array or something that needs repaired, and you can just like go in with your salvage tool and you can spray some stuff. I'm gonna say some very rude stuff, but I'm gonna try to
some white stuff. Some white stuff.
Spray some white stuff all over the pipes and whatnot. It heals it up. They could do that, but you're right, Paul. They may be waiting for the new EVA system to come in.
Yeah, because I mean was from what I'm hearing from all of y'all is that like the vibe I'm getting is that I think most of y'all have pointed at the point that like the main focus of the game thus far and recently has been go to this planet, do this thing. Go to this planet, do this thing. Go to this planet and shoot things. And even when you get out of your ship in space, it's always going back to go shoot things.
It's go into, get out of your ship, go into a gravity well, shoot things. Go to a place, get out of your ship, go into a gravity well, shoot things. That's kind of like.
I think that's just because they don't have any other mechanics in the game yet.
Yeah,
you know?
I disagree. They have plenty of other mechanics in the game. Crafting is in the game right now. You can craft fuses in your vulture.
Yeah, but so let's put it this way: like the whole line in mine mission, the whole idea there right now is to grab goodies, and you're gonna,
And I'm going to correct you on that. I'm going to be very pedantic.
God. Okay.
It's not a mission. It's an event. It's a location.
I get it. Okay,
And
but
I see people talk about this all the time, and they complain that they can't complete the event without combat. And it was like, that's not the event. The story. I saw this on the live stream where what was his name? The narrative guys.
Yeah, there, guys. Yeah.
They were talking about like the story, and people were complaining that they can't complete the story without going to Hathor. Like, no, you can. You could do the story mission right now. You just got to go pick 10 flowers in the wilderness and turn that into Riari.
The whole idea behind that whole thing, though, is you're supposed to be able to. It's supposed to distribute the workload of that event or mission or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. That there's the FPS military component for defending the miners and tackling the station, putting the batteries on there as an example. There's ship combat for clearing the area and make sure there's no ships come in. But the other piece of that would be potentially taking the materials from it and taking it and then bringing those materials someplace else to do something further with it, whether it's to build a station or build a ship, things that aren't in the game yet, refine it in a way that you could then bring it to another crafting area and do some of the crafting stuff. Those are pieces of the puzzle that aren't there yet. And I can see, right now it might seem kind of limited and there's not a lot you can do with it, but that, they've said they're trying to focus on, clearing out the game and building out of adding content to the game so they can improve what they've got now.
Smoking that hopium, aren't we? Just it's one day, Vertigo. One day.
What else?
13 years.
What else did you do with it?
13 years. This is what we have, right? CIG's been telling us, like, wait for it, bro. It's coming. It's going to be good. This is what we have now. We can't really bank on what's coming in the future. Yeah, crafting's coming. Yeah, base building's coming. How many years? 2 years? 3 years? 4 years? Is America is going to exist in that time before it starts releases?
Oh, we're getting into
move and keep playing the game.
Queen.
Yeah,
they all moved. They went to Manchester for a reason.
Yeah.
Tomato, you're going to say something?
I don't even remember anymore.
All right, so
ADHD, right?
Jesus. The point that like their content follows what they have. Like where they've been able to get NPCs running is where they've been able to push us. They didn't do anything really interesting with NPCs for a long time because they couldn't walk around outside, right? Even when they did get the planetary tech navigation tech working, we still didn't see NPCs outside of the bunkers for years. And one of the stupidest additions to this game was that freaking mounted gun that they spent like three months telling us about and showing us all these background freaking working models of it, and then they dropped it in the game outside of a bunker where there were no enemies. And I'm like, what do we do with this? So they finally started getting enemies out there, but I feel like they got enemies out there, so now those missions are more interesting. Enemies are outside, so now they're able to do the Hathor locations. What happens when they get enemies able to EVA or enemies able to actually walk around on spaceships? Do we start seeing missions that require you to fight past EVA enemies?
Yes, please. Please. So. I want that.
I want a complaint to say that it's not in the game yet. Yeah. But you have to recognize that if that's where they're going, we can all complain about the time frame, but you have to acknowledge at least that that's what their intent is to eventually have all of that be part of the gameplay. Those loops have to be there at some point.
I will also say, because one of the things that I think is coming up a lot is that what it sounds like is that most of us feel the complaint about Star Citizen being a space game is not being a space game stems from the fact that while there is actions in space, a lot of it is travel from point A to point B to do a thing. You're traveling from one planet to another to do a thing, and space is just quantum driving. There's no engagement with the gameplay. It's just travel, and like at that point, Starfield does that, and very few people consider Starfield to be like the premier example of a space game. It's just a game in space. Which is what a lot of people's complaints about Starfield.
There was a few times in Starfield where I was able to disable an enemy ship and dock to it, and the gravity was disabled. And EVA in Starfield, those few times I was able to do that in Starfield, it was the most wonderful thing ever. Because you go into this cramped ship space with your shotgun, and you see an enemy spaceman across the hallway. You fire your shotgun, and suddenly you're being propelled into the bulkhead behind you from the recoil. And I'm just like, holy crap! It's a space game.
There was an entire mission in Starfield where you went on a space station with half the time it had its power, its gravity generator off, and so it was
That was
all
a great mission.
About like the different levels, and every time you fired, you would get propelled backwards, and someone would be like above and around you. It's like it's clearly the mission designers love to play with that. Mm-hmm. So, I think what the big complaint, and I think the solution to this answer, because this is going to come into the next one. Into the next question is, what is CIG's solution to solving this problem? Because as I said, perception is reality. So how would CIG deal with these things? And I think at least from Vertigo's point, and I think is actually a good point, is having things like, I remember when the missions were go to this wreck and find the bodies. Mm-hmm. And they were floating around, or pick up the
emergency beacon,
and return it back.
I do remember those. Yeah,
those were fun because it was all about. It was like a scavenger hunt, but it was like in this debris field. And you had to go to the different sections of the ship and all. These
and sometimes there'd be stuff to find in those debris fields.
Yeah, little bonuses and stuff like those. And I think that's what's missing, is that people want to feel like they're actually doing stuff in space other than just flying from.
They want to feel like they have a purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that is the big thing that I stressed there with this is Chris has kind of wanted, you can hear Chris talking in some cases where he wants to have everything diegetic in the game, where there's a purpose for doing everything, and not necessarily just have like levels. Like he wanted to try to stay away, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit. He wanted to stay away from the gamification of Star Citizen, so much so that it was all about strictly, using the mechanic to up your skills so you can build this thing, or getting a level so you can earn a new skill here. Those are typical characteristics of an MMO that are commonplace, but he's trying to avoid them. But the problem with that is those are the mechanics that keep people engaged and give them purpose. So, you made a comment about how people complain that, it's mostly about quantuming from point A to point B and maybe shooting something up. What will change that is when they fix the game to make it so that our ships do have some sense of permanency, so that you can put things on a ship, do things on the ship, and not risk worrying about it falling out of the ship when you go to quantum, or having the game crash and losing everything there. So for an example, if they start having portable crafters that you put in your ship, and you start wanting to make components for the ship, instead of having an actual, skill indicator for your character, you're buying components for your ship to improve it. And that's a bit of a grind, kind of. It gives you purpose and want to keep engaging with the game, going to places to get special materials so you can make that, that component for your ship that's one notch better than the one you had before, that kind of thing. You can clearly see that's where they're going. That's why they've kind of described that's what they want to have with crafting and the quality of crafting and the material qualities and all that kind of stuff. But the issue is that the mechanics just aren't there yet. And there's no way to have that comfort level that you're doing anything permanent with your ship, because you could lose it in a heartbeat, crashing into a space station by accident or something, and not having item insurance. Those are important characteristics. Yeah. Those are things you have to have in a game, reliably working for someone to feel like they have a sense of progression in it.
So Vertigo, your thoughts on how can CIG address this issue with this? I think Radar Ranger, your point, Andy's point is like that there needs to be more stable gameplay before CIG can actually have these sorts of events that they need to. And without that stability, they can't even do this space stuff, because there's no point, because no one will do it, because things will just break. And is that what you're saying, Andy?
Sort of. I mean, I think it's based on the direction they have chosen to take. Those are the components that they need to have in place for it, because they're not going to gamify it so much so that we're going to have, we're going to go pull up our profile and see what level we're at.
Yeah.
So what is the replacement for that? And then what they're seeming to suggest is the idea of crafting and improving your character and its capabilities through the equipment you own and buy.
Okay. So Vertigo, how would you address the concerns of people that said this is not a space game? How would you get those people to stop complaining, to stop being noisy about all of this? Or as
I mean, obviously, just create more space content. Take that PI wanted mission that we had from in forever and just make more missions kind of like that, where you're going in, you roll up with your ship, you go in EDA, you fly through a space station that has a bunch of boxes floating in there, and basically like take one of the supervisor hangars take one of the supervisor bases
Mhm.
in Pyro, remove the gravity, remove the airlocks, and just put a bunch of boxes in there floating around. And don't spawn NPCs. There you go.
Okay.
That would be a step in the right direction, right? But I don't know if the game can handle that, because you'd have to have like loot boxes floating in zero gravity that players can interact with, or you have to find some way to bolt them down. So, but that's basically it. I don't understand why they didn't do that, but CIG seems to be obsessed with adding FPS AI everywhere.
Mhm.
And that's another problem that a lot of people complain about, that Star Citizen is not, the PvP crowd complains that Star Citizen's too easy now with all the,
I think
you
that's
could
driven by
respawn.
Chris wanting the universe to look populated.
You don't have to have it populated, though. Pyro is supposed to be sparsely populated, right? We don't need NPCs everywhere. Like I said, the supervisor hangar where you get the red key card.
They just don't have anything else interesting to put in the game. They don't have enough loot. Like they could. I love the idea of what.
Well,
you
they're
came
adding
up with.
scripts in the future, stuff you can't buy from the web store,
Yeah.
right?
Blueprints.
No. They're adding the scripts. The mercenary.
So in
scripts.
411, for those of you who don't know, they actually have this like metal token, which looks like gold press latinum or Beskar. And its main purpose is that you can turn those into with places like
Wikilo.
As opposed to having to go to do a line in mine, you can just bypass a line in mine with those scripts, and you can find them everywhere. You can loot them, that kind of stuff. But the idea being that they're sort of a token you can use for other points. Like it's clear that they're going to use that for other actions in the future.
I'm going to say I told you so. I told you they were going to introduce some
Banu Bucks. Yeah.
Banu Bucks. I told you they were going to introduce Banu Bucks into the game that you can't buy from the web store, right?
Yeah.
CIG made a huge mistake when they had the ability to sell credits to everybody.
Yeah. That's oof. I don't even know how they're ever going to get past that.
Reputation and reputation and script. That's how they're going to do it. They're going to devalue credits to be like XP, basically.
They're expensive, but you can still buy them, which is
it's still there. I bought some a long time ago.
Cash to get anything valuable.
Yeah,
and some people have.
They're going to devalue the hell out of the UEC. The UEC is going to be inflated to hell and back. Is what it's going to do.
Another thing I've noticed, that a lot of the new starter packs, a lot of the new special like discounted starter packs are coming out to celebrate like Invictus or
the free flight,
the other one, free flights and whatnot. Those will actually have more United Earth credits in those packs than the packs I have in my original starter pack that I spent $200 on 13 years ago.
Inflation, baby.
Inflation, baby. It's coming for Star Citizen.
I think the one thing that this game, not the one thing, screw that.
There's a lot of things.
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of one things. Yeah.
I know,
one of the big things that they're missing in this game to kind of take the focus away from this whole Call of Citizen or whatever the name was.
Star of Duty.
Yeah, the Star of Duty vibe is their investigation missions, which they showed us in CitizenCon 21, I think, and sounded like a great way to make space exploration and derelict ship exploration and ground caves and all the different locations they've come up with, just kind of put the investigation stuff in there with an open-ended mission. It was basically like the Gundo Covalix mission, but like they could put it in different places. And I think that would have made a big difference, because that's basically what you're talking about, Vertigo, right? Put that in a degravitated space station.
Not exactly the Gundo Covalix in investigation mission specifically, but missions kind of like that, where you get out of your ship, you go into a space station, and you find stuff. You could even do combat with other players. You just have to create something that players want, like the red key cards for the CZs, the special ships from the Pyrotechnic Amalgamated Executive Hangars, and you could put those in space. You could have a wrecked Javelin in space, right? Because we have that wrecked Javelin on Daymar I haven't visited in a long time. You could put something like that in space for a Xenothreat. We had this gigantic Xenothreat battlefield, and so you have all these wrecked Idrises, and sometimes Xenothreat shows up in there and they stash stuff in there. You can go in there and you can find stuff,
What do you guys feel about more elaborate puzzle missions in the game? Kind of similar to what they've showed for Squadron.
I think those
are
like
being able to EVA someplace, and then rather than just look for loot box or something like that, you're actually trying to solve a puzzle and try to get
Gain
through.
access.
Yeah.
Like a derelict station where you have to like go recharge
Kind of like the executive
station.
hangar in Pyro.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like
the
that.
number
But,
key cards.
but those key cards are little like that's pretty simple. You just got to get those key cards.
That's too simplistic.
Like it's like
that's
power the generator back on so that you can then access these doors and then
that stuff would break
they
constantly,
promote in
unfortunately. It would be nice to have more puzzle-based, movement-based missions where you're doing physics and whatnot. But right now, I don't think the engine would support that. It's one of the reasons why we have like the Call of Duty stuff, because that stuff works most of the
Do you guys think that the resource network, they might start adding more puzzle-based stuff? Like
I hope so.
that might be a trigger, or they just add it and then don't use it for that.
Well,
I think so.
We know, for instance, the like that you mentioned earlier, Space Tomato, the investigation missions. Not only have they been working on it, but we know that the writers have been spending like weeks, months writing up these missions so that they can become more procedural. I think one of the major flaws that CIG has right now is that a lot of the stuff that they had and this is the same thing happened between 2.0 and 3.0, and is now happening between 3.0 and 4.0, is that basically everything that was built for 3.0 needs to be overhauled. And while a lot of stuff did get overhauled from 3.0 to 4.0, there are some major parts which didn't, and those are the ones that everyone complains about that they've been focusing on: the mission system and the transit system. And while the transit system is limping and functioning, they still need to overhaul it, and they still need to do the mission system, which they're in the process of updating for what it needs to be. It's not quite as drastic as the 2.0 to 3.0 change, where it was basically like they threw everything out that they had built for 2.0 for 3.0. It doesn't seem like they're throwing everything out. It's just more of they have to adapt it for server meshing, bigger scale of the gameplay. And so I think one of the problems right now is that CIG is focusing on those things and not focusing on new content. And because they don't have that new content in the game, even though it's in Squadron, or they'll mention it in monthly reports about how they done X, Y, or Z, they don't really have that in game yet. And so they have to use what they have available. And it's the old CIG conundrum of, do we just pull from the files a derelict ship and then go find box and return box and make that work? Or do we build a brand new mission with a new rec that you might be able to, like, you might need to put in a fuse here so you can get this door open so that you can go into this location and then pull out the box. And, because then to put that original mission back in, it would take them, maybe 3-6 months to do so. Or do they spend that time and maybe a little bit more to build a brand new mission that they hopefully won't have to go back and change once they have engineering and all those other things. So,
yeah. Am I imagining things? I remember Dave Haddock mentioning at CitizenCon, one of them, maybe the recent one, that they wanted to work on more investigative missions.
Yeah, I've mentioned it a couple times.
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I remember a monthly report where they straight up said that they were working on, they reviewed a couple of missions they had written because they were like, what about this item on this table? And how do we deal with investigation in terms of storytelling within the mission itself, so it doesn't feel so generic. So they've definitely been working on it.
I think just taking a step back, they absolutely had to start addressing the bug problem, because they were starting to get a lot of attention. More and more people were trying to get into the game, and I'm sure their stats showed them that there was a significant amount of people who were kind of getting engaged and then bailing because they were running into problems. And it's, in retrospect, it can be kind of hard to say, okay, this is exactly the point where we should stop and fix bugs. But clearly they got to that stage somehow. And, I think we all kind of want that. We all need them to make the game more stable so that we can actually get in there and enjoy it, so the new people can come in and enjoy it. And once they have that stable foundation, the hope is that they would start
the stable foundation that's been coming for the past 10 years. Any day now.
I can't knock that sarcasm whatsoever. But you got to hope that at some point they're actually going to get there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a hope thing. I think it's a CIG has to, because if they don't, look at the last financials. They were what 10 million in the red.
That was because they had one lease payment that they had to, not a lease payment. It's like an advance payment that they had to set aside.
Yeah.
I read that looked through that thing. So that wasn't as bad as it seemed.
No, and on top of that, they've already, even if that was the case, they were like already
And
10
I don't
million
wanna-
ahead this year from last year.
I was about to say, I don't want to jinx it, but how the hell is that? What changed? Why are they suddenly like twice they're doing last year? I'm glad, but what did I miss?
I think you just said it right now, is that people they said they were going to focus on improving the game and bug fixing. And it seems that that's brought a lot of people back to buying the game. And Pyro was out. I know a lot of people said that they weren't going to buy anything until Pyro was out, and now Pyro has been out for a couple months now. So probably a lot of combination of a lot of different factors. And it's like I am of the opposite opinion. I am of the move fast and break stuff camp. Like I'm of the get the thing done and then come back and fix it, because at least we can play with thing and give you feedback on thing, rather than you spending a bunch of time building the thing and then it sucks and then we have to tell you it sucks and then you have to go back and fix it again. So this back and forth, rather than just drop it in.
What was that?
And then fix it. But I understand
my dislike of Pyro's arts. The burn barrels, like CIG they spent years developing Pyro just in their own little box, and they released Pyro to the wild, and I'm like, I hate this. Like the one thing you don't want on a space station is open flames, right? Can we all agree with that? Just
that was actually something they focused on when they first showed it off at CitizenCon. I remember, because they specifically were like, yeah, this central area of the space station is warm because of all of the open flames and the stuff that they're doing, and then these side hallways are very cold and abandoned.
I could rant about that for days, but that's like neither here nor here. I've done that before on this podcast.
Let's go over you, Tomato, and then we'll kind of wrap up this discussion, because we're coming up to the discussion. It was a good discussion. I think we hit on a lot of good points as to where this comes from. But Tomato, how would you fix the problem? Actually, Andy, did you talk about how you fix the problem?
I think I did. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, how do you fix the problem with this perspective of that the Star Citizen's not a space game? If you had to put yourself in the mindset of this,
to be quite honest, there are so many opinions of the direction of Star Citizen. You will find people that tell you that Star Citizen is becoming purely a PvP game.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are saying it is focusing purely on industrial gameplay. Some people will say it's focusing purely on combat. Some people will say it's becoming too arcade. Some people will say it's becoming too complicated. So much FPS. It's like, it just depends on whatever is happening in the last couple months, it feels like. I think that all CIG needs to do to get past the idea that it's becoming less of a space game is just talk more about the space development they're doing. And actually add the missions in those areas. I mean, we haven't gotten a lot of contracts in space, and I get that. I wish that engineering was here by now. I assumed it would be by the time they dropped the Polaris, and I thought that was like the whole, it's a big ship. Let's have big ship stuff, and they completely missed that. And even now, we still don't know where it is. It's not in the EPTU. It's not being talked about. It's not being shown in ISC. Like, I'm as annoyed about that as anybody else. But I do think that those kinds of things are what help this seem more like a space game. Like the whole risk of vacuum being lost, of temperature, of power systems dying. It reeks to me of go on this derelict ship and try to get it to power up, kind of little.
And Raider Ranger brought that up in his response, where he said, once we get engineering going and whatnot, then the consequences of losing a fight, the consequences of losing a fight is you've lost life support, you lost power. Now your ship is an event now.
Yeah.
Right, your ship is now content.
We all get to have those Scotty moments.
You now are adrift and running out of air in space, and maybe be getting boarded, and now you are the content.
Out of gas episode of Firefly. Every space TV show and movie has, or not every movie, but every space TV show has the episode where they're broken and they need to fix something and the part's missing, or they're running out of oxygen, or their power is dying. All of those episodes. That's basically like half of the first season of Star Trek Voyager. It's just
they add tension with the option of solution, which gives you the endorphins of solving the problem.
Yeah.
That's the focus of space. They just need to get that system in and then make content around it. I think that helps a lot.
Yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it too. I agree in general. I think the big focus, and CSG's already starting to do some of that, because I actually went through and played all of the starter missions for Gilly, and I think that's a good direction, because I was surprised that the first level of the tutorial for combat has almost no combat. It's just go to a satellite, scan, and figure out how to do scanning. So you ping and then you scan a satellite.
That's the tutorial part.
Yeah. And then the second part is actually shooting a ship. But like the first part is just learning to scan your so it's basically exploration. It's like go to this area, ping, then scan the satellite. Go to this area, ping, scan a satellite. Go to this area, ping, scan a satellite. So
I would add a little bit to what Sweet Tomato said. I think what CIG has to do is follow through.
Mm-hmm.
They have already said that they want to make this a cohesive game that's for everybody. It's not just an FPS game. It's not just a space game. It's not just a crafting game. It's all of those. And the issue is that they are dealing with all of the roadblocks that have come along the way. Bugs, technical challenges, resource issues with being able to get the stuff done in time. They've kind of told us what they're aiming for, and we're just not there yet. We just have to we have to wait longer for them to actually get, to that point where they have those things. I think that's really what it comes down to. Yeah. 2 years.
Yeah.
Just 2 years.
Always 2 years. Always
Right
2
there
years.
with Fusion.
All right, I think it's a good discussion on a lot of this. We're going to move over to the question and answer session. I will say that didn't feel like an hour and 5 minutes, but that was an hour and 5 minutes. So
yeah, that's because it was a really good conversation.
Yeah, I think we had good conversations on that one. So, and people in chat are considering Sweet Tomato. It's like that's what Radar Ranger calls Space Tomato now.
His name for me.
That's his name now. Just his name.
They missed that background.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to be taking a few minutes break, but if you're watching this after the fact, please do subscribe. We just got our monetization, and love to have you hang out if you enjoyed this content. We do this sort of thing on Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on youtube.com/@the-Captain's-Table-Podcast and twitch.tv/theastropub. We'd love to have you join live, and we're going to be moving into the question and answer session, our After Dark section. So feel free to stick around if you're still watching this live. Thank you to HC Vertigo. Make sure you check out HC Vertigo on YouTube and Twitch, mostly on Twitch. Make sure to check out My Radar. I use the app all the time. It's really helpful. It's funny because we had a storm come through Texas recently, and
you got a lot of them.
We had a lot of them, and it was funny because it was the My Radar has this little indicator where it tells you when the rain's going to come, and Google does too. And it's what happened was I'd get a My Radar thing that says rain's going to start in 15 minutes, and then like 2 minutes later, Google would be like, rain starting in 13 minutes. And it's like, they're racing each other and see who's going to tell me when rain's going to happen. So it's a good app. It's free for the phones, and I think it's for all platforms, right?
Yep. Android, iOS, Windows, Apple TV, Android TV, Xbox.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And of course,
I use it.
Check out Space Tomato, twitch.tv/Space Tomato, and then of course on YouTube on all of the Space Tomato 2, Space Tomato Gaming. What is it? Space Tomatoes for your like
Just
vlog.
the tomatoes.
Is it the tomatoes for the vlog style?
Real life stuff, yeah. Just tomato things.
Check out the Garden Intergalactic, right? Or Interstellar.
Garden Interstellar Initiative. There it is. Yeah.
GII. Go check that out for their orgs. And yeah, thank you for watching. And like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.